philosophy. That's the way it is understood in the West. That kind of differentiation was not there so much in the Vedic tradition. But even our acharyas, they reason based on scripture, but they are also capable of reasoning without needing scripture. Because there are Gnostic traditions like the Buddhists and the Jains and the materialists, the Charvakwadis, they wouldn't accept scripture. And our acharyas had to challenge and counter their arguments also. So in that sense, philosophy was also there. But as I said, there was the Dvaita and the Advaita was going on. And now, with who are we targeting? Who are we trying to reach? If there's an existing debate going on which side do we fall? Do we side on this side or that side? Or do we fall nowhere among those? Just we are on our own side. So that was the challenge. And here, while Mahaprabhu's teachings provided a distinctive perspective on how the Dvaita and the Advaita could be reconciled. At the same time, it also created certain challenges. So this term, Chintya Bheda Bhed, that term is not used by Mahaprabhu directly. This term was coined by Jiva Goswami. And what he did at that time in his writings was that he tried to connect with different people. And he said, okay, this is what the Advaitins teach, this is what the Advaitins teach. Now, Mahaprabhu, if you see, Mahaprabhu had done something extraordinary. Mahaprabhu, at one level, was clearly a devotee. He was a Vaishnava, he would chant the holy names. But then, what had Mahaprabhu done? Mahaprabhu had taken sannyas from someone who was in the Advaita Sampradaya. Now, he took sannyas from the Advaita Sampradaya and he chose a person who was also a devotee. Now, we say if somebody is Advaita Sampradaya, how can he be a devotee? What happened at those times was that the Advaitins also recognized that if we just teach Advaitavad, that cannot connect with most of the masses. So they also started teaching, you can practice Bhakti initially. Shankaracharya also has talked about Bhakti. You practice Bhakti initially, and then you will realize that the Bhagwan you are worshipping, you and that Bhagwan, both of them are Maya, and you need to go into Brahman ultimately. But till then, you can worship Bhagwan. So Mahaprabhu, sannyas was from the Advaita Sampradaya. Now his first initiation, his Nama Diksha, was clearly from a Bhakta. Ishwar Puri is said to be from following Madhavendra Puri, who is supposed to be from the, we said to be from the Dvaita tradition, Madhva tradition. So now, that's why when Mahaprabhu would go to different places, it is said in Chaitanya Charitamrita that when he went to Udupi, sannyasis saw him, Udupi leaders saw him, they thought he's Advaita sannyasi. Initially they held him in skepticism. Why? Why did he see him as Advaita sannyasi? Because his initiation had been an Advaita Sampradaya. And then later on they understood that he is not at all a Mayavad. So he is a great devotee. And even when he went to Varanasi, he chanted and danced and sung. And the sannyasis over there, they said, okay, yeah, chanting, dancing is for common people to do. That's fair enough. Sannyasis may also sometimes encourage people to do it. But it's a real business of a sannyasi is to come and sit and discuss Vedanta with us. Why are you not coming and doing that? Why are you doing the activity of the less intelligent people? They were dismissing Mahaprabhu as less intelligent. Especially the leader among them was at that time Prakashananda Saraswati. And then when Mahaprabhu spoke to the time when Prakashananda Saraswati realized his real Prakash, what is real Ananda, and what is the real blessing of Saraswati. That Prakash, that effulgence, that is not the ultimate reality. That comes from the form of ultimate reality. The real Ananda is not the Brahmananda. It pales into insignificance as compared to Bhakti Ananda. The ultimate blessing of Saraswati is not to see beyond all dualities and categories to the oneness of Brahman, but it is to develop complete love for Krishna. Buddha Bhava Samanvitaha, as Krishna says in 10.8 in the Gita. So, Mahaprabhu, in some ways, he appeared to be an Advaitic sannyasi, but he was not at all that. But what were the exact teachings? So this is where the Goswamis had, because Jiva Goswami took the responsibility of systematizing the Siddhanta that Mahaprabhu had taught. So he himself had no direct interaction with Mahaprabhu, but he heard from Rupa Goswami, he heard from Sanatana Goswami, and he deep devotion, and he also had great scholarship. The Sandarbhas that he wrote, where the systematic philosophical codification. Now, it was systematic philosophy is presented, but still its philosophy presented in a particular way. As he moves forward, there is Krishna Sandarbha, there is Preeti Sandarbha. So ultimately, what he's saying is, he's following Rupa Goswami, and he's saying that we will experience the divine, we realize the nature of the divine, not through analysis, but through opening our heart, through aesthetic experience. And while this had been taught in terms of bhakti by previous acharyas, the fact of joining it with rasa in the very systematic, analytical way that was done by Rupa Goswami, Jiva Goswami carried that on in his tradition, in his books. Now, after this, while all this was going on, there were many challenges. Actually, if you look at it from I said the political context, we won't talk much, but there are some things which need to be talked about. When the Goswamis were there, we look at the political history, and then we look at the Gaudiya history. So primarily when the Goswamis were there, that broadly coincide with the rule of Akbar. Now Akbar was no saint, but relatively speaking, he was far less intolerant than any other things. So during this time, the Goswamis used their experience in working with Nawab Hussain Shah, and they made sure that they took that Vrindavan was protected. That Vrindavan was, the glory of Vrindavan was remanifested. Of course, he was not the only political ruler. At that time, there was also, relatively speaking, if you consider this on one side, the other side, there was Rajasthan, Jaipur, and there were the Rajput kings who were ruling. And they were very pious. So the Goswamis also built relationships with them. And many of these Rajput merchants or Rajput kings, they helped build the temples. The Goswamis, now between the Rajputs and the Muslim kings, now there were also tensions, but they also made alliances. The Muslims, sometimes the Rajput kings fought against the Muslims, sometimes the Rajput kings worked under the Muslims. It was all complicated, but it's a delicate balancing act that the Goswamis did. And Vrindavan slowly started manifesting the glory. This is the time when the beautiful Radha Madan Mohan temple came up, the Govindji temple came up. The Goswamis were able to build this. They didn't go out fundraising, but by their saintliness, they attracted people. All of us have probably heard stories of how each of the temples was built. I'm not going to go into the stories, those particular stories. We're talking about the broader principle. In the political context, the Muslims, they were always unpredictable what they're going to do. One king might be good, but what about the next king? So the Goswamis didn't antagonize the Muslims, but at the same time, they befriended with the Rajputs. And then we will see later on, after Akbar, there was Shahjahan, then Aurangzeb came up. So now, when Aurangzeb came, he devastated Vrindavan in many ways. So much of the work of the Goswamis, that was undone. And then after that, Vishwanath Chakra Thakur had to come. And then Baldev Vidyabhushan came. And then they again had to restore Vrindavan. That Dharmasya Glani happens, and then Yada Yada Hi Dharmasya. That happens again, and then Dharma Samsthapanarthaya. Sometimes the Lord comes, sometimes the Lord sends his representatives. So, but at this particular point, the Goswamis, they built some temples over here, and they restored Vrindavan to its glory. This is also broadly, so when I talk about political, cultural, devotional, theological, they're not entirely non-intersect. They relate with each other to a large degree. But to understand it, we are looking at these various. Now there are some in every tradition, especially in every Bhakti tradition, there are many stories about miracles. Oh, this particular king came, this particular king came to destroy this particular temple, and then this deity did this, or this saint did this, and then that thing was transformed, and thereafter he did not do anything. Now, if all these stories were to be believed, then it would seem as if not a single temple in India was destroyed. Every single temple was miraculously proven, miraculously protected. Now, of course, we know that didn't happen. I'm not saying that none of these stories are true, but we can't just say that the way our acharyas function is that they did not depend on some miraculous intervention by the Lord to protect each time some danger would be there. They were aware of the danger. They did what was feasible for them to deal with. As far as the Indian history goes, the first official will that is recorded in the Indian tradition of not just at an individual level, but at an organizational level, temple organizational level, is actually the bill written by Rupa Jiva Goswami when he departed. That okay, what will happen to the various temples? Who will look after what? Who will take care of this? Who will take care of that? Who will address it? So Jiva Goswami was very, very meticulous in this. Now so in this way, the Achintya Bheda teaching. Now, at this particular point, they were in Vrindavan, they were not traveling speakers. At that time, there was no internet. At that time, there were no extensive followers who would go and distribute books. So, this point, while the Goswamis had done enormous amount of intellectual work, but it was unknown to the world. What to speak of the world? It was unknown even outside Vrindavan, leave alone in various parts of India. So, the next phase was vital. And we'll talk about that, and then we will conclude. This is now one part of the story, the adventurousness. We know that the three followers who took the literature of the Goswamis from Vrindavan to Bengal, that Prabhupada and the devotees sometimes call it the first traveling Sankirtan party. And there was a threat of the king Bhiram Bhir, who stole it away. All that miraculous story, the story we know. It's an amazing story. But what was so significant about the books of the Goswamis at that time? And why was this particular journey so important? So, if we consider that it's wonderful to write books, it's very important to have systematic knowledge. But unless knowledge is distributed, it's not going to benefit you. And quite often, those who are really deep into knowledge, they just interested in probably going deeper and deeper into knowledge. They don't have the tendency necessarily to go travel all and distribute. So the Goswamis focused on systematizing and writing, but then somebody had to carry it forward. Now, while the Goswamis were building bridges with the various contexts at those particular times, but there was one vital bridge that was built by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. And he is not among the six Goswamis, but he's also considered a Vrindavan Goswami. And what he did shaped the direction of Gaudiya Vaishnava history thereafter. So basically, Gaudiya Vaishnavism was going on in two different places. One was in Vrindavan, Braja, and the other was in Bengal. It was then Orissa also, but after Mahaprabhu departed, soon Prataprudra could not maintain his life. After Prataprudra departed, then the Muslim king from Bengal attacked Orissa and just devastated things in Orissa. So things in Orissa were not that powerful at that. So what had happened was, as I said, in Bengal, there were followers. Many, many followers of Mahaprabhu. In Vraja, there were scholars. So now a link between the followers and the scholars had to be made. And how was this going to be done? what was the means for this? So the thing was, there's several challenges. In Bengal, most of the people there were interested in Katha. Even the books that were written in Bengal were primarily Katha books, not exclusively, but primarily Katha books. Murari Gupta had written his Karchas, and then Vrindavan Das Thakur had written Chaitanya Bhagwat, Lochan Das Thakur had written Chaitanya Mangal. Totally, there were 27 biographies were written. 9 of them are still extant. Not all of them are considered equally authorized because different people wrote things in different ways. But Mahaprabhu had a significant impact. Normally, when is a biography of a person written? When the follower just can't tolerate the idea that if this person departs, the memory of that person will also depart. The memory at least has to stay and stay alive. So the kathas, the pastimes of Mahaprabhu were beautifully written in these books. And of course, because it was Bengal, everything was written in Bengali. Now, so the content and the language were different. Now, Mahaprabhu had visited Vrindavan, and 2 months had been a spectacular time of ecstatic devotion for him, as well as all those who associate with him. But it was just one visit. He had come and he had gone. It was not that Vrindavan suddenly became filled with Gaura Bhakti. It didn't happen. So when the Goswamis wrote books in Vrindavan, they had to write for the audience that was there. They didn't write any Gaur Katha books. They offered their obeisances to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as their teacher. But their books, when they wrote any Katha books, their Katha was Krishna Katha books. Gopal Champu was written over there, and books like that. The 10th Canto commentary by Jiva Goswami is there. Rupa Goswami wrote some Leela books. But this was important, but the much more important was the Tattva books. So the books that they were wrote on Tattva, whether it is the Rasa Tattva or the Vedantic Tattva. So the Tattva books, and because in Vrindavan there are hardly any Bengalis, so the books that were written were in Sanskrit. So now it's two different sets of followers with two different legacies were there. And as I mentioned, that Mahaprabhu had come and he had gone, and he had not left any will, he had not appointed any followers, he had not set up any processes for carrying on his teachings. So, while in Bengal there were many followers, there was also some confusion. What exactly did Mahaprabhu teach? What did Mahaprabhu stand for? So this is where Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami came from Bengal to Vrindavan. He grew up in his childhood immersed in Gaur Katha. He came to Goswamis and he learned the teachings of Mahaprabhu systematically. By learning those teachings, he then came back. And rather, he didn't come back, but here he composed Chaitanya Charitamrita. Chaitanya Charitamrita is the book where Katha and Tattva both are combined together. Chaitanya Bhagavad, Chaitanya Mangal, they are much more Katha than Tattva. Chaitanya Charitamrita did was that it is a biography. That means it's Katha. But it's also a book of theology. If you see, normally if somebody is writing a story book, say, hey, we tell there's a Bhagavad Katha on Krishna Leela, on say Krishna's Govardhan Leela. If that is the topic of a series of say 7 talks or 3 talks, then we would expect them to focus primarily on Krishna Katha, on Govardhan Leela specifically. If at that time they start talking about Bhagavad Gita or Uddhav Gita and go deep into philosophy, that would seem inappropriate. Chaitanya Charitamrita is a book of biography, but actually the most details about it in our past times are not described in so much detail. Beautifully described, whatever is described. Magnificently beautiful. At the same time, its primary focus is the conversations. So where Mahaprabhu's narrative, life is narrated, but wherever there's a philosophical discussion, it zooms in. And zooming in, there's elaborate discussion. The 5 great conversations of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sarvam Bhattacharya, with Prakashanand Saraswati, with Rupa Goswami, with Sanatan Goswami, with Ramanand Rai. This is what the Prabhupada later put together the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. These are what were especially significant and distinctive about the Chaitanya Charitamrita. This level of philosophically, theologically sophisticated discussion was not there. And when the Srivasacharya, Shaman Pandit, and Thakur, they came back, the first traveling Sankirtan party, they, among the various books they brought back, one of the key books was actually Chaitanya Charitamrita. And through Chaitanya Charitamrita, the followers in Bengal came to know what were Mahaprabhu's exact pastimes, what were his teachings, what did he stand for. And the Chaitanya Charitamrita became a book like you that unified the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition. It was considered to be the book that actually ensured that the succession of the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition went on. And so there is the adventurousness by which the book came. But the adventure becomes much more significant when we understand why what they were carrying was such a great treasure. Without that clear understanding, different people had different memories of Mahaprabhu. Memory is a funny thing. Sometimes we remember something accurately, sometimes we don't remember something accurately. And it's not intentional, sometimes it's unintentional. There's so many devotees who remember so many pastimes of Prabhupada, which are just so unlikely to have happened. Because they remember it as if it's perfectly true. It's very difficult to say whether it actually happened or not. So, it's a systematic record over there. The Chaitanya Charitamrita played that role. So, the Goswamis, in one sense, linked with the outsiders. At that time, the outsider was the Rasa tradition, the outsider was the Vedantic tradition, the outsiders were the Brahmanas, the outsiders were the political rulers, and they also linked with the insiders. The insiders were the Gaudiya Vaishnava followers themselves. But now, when they linked with the Gaudiya Vaishnava followers, what happened was the Gaudiya Vaishnava followers became united. And that's how the tradition continued on. Now, I did not consider one particular point, which I'll be discussing in our next session. So, that is the specific mellow of bhakti, of the viraha bhav, of Radha bhakti, of not just bhakti for Krishna, Vishnu, bhakti for Krishna, in the mood of Srimati Radharani, in separation from Krishna, that parakiya bhav and viraha in parakiya bhav within Madhurya Rasa. So that, what was its significance? And how that particular distinctive significance presented extraordinary opportunities, but also extraordinary challenges. And how those challenges were addressed. That we will discuss when we discuss about Vishwanath Chakra Thakur and Baldev Vidyabhushan in our next session. So I'll summarize what we discussed today. We discussed about the Gaudiya history, and we focused on the first chapter within Gaudiya history. The first chapter that we're focusing on is that the chapter of the Goswamis. So I basically explained, based on Prabhupada's explanation of what is the realization, that every acharya, every living teacher has to connect the message of scripture with the audience. And there are different audiences who need to be connected with in appropriate ways. So how the acharyas go about doing that? That's what we had a brief overview of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's life. And then after that, we discussed the various context. Briefly, we discussed the ritual or the ecclesiastical context. What rituals do we perform? So the Hari Bhakti Vilas by the Goswamis, that's an example of that. Then, especially, we discussed about the cultural context. In the cultural context, there was this rasa tradition. Rasa was traditionally associated with drama. But Mahaprabhu said that it can be associated with bhakti. Rasa can be an experience that we develop, that helps us connect with Krishna. So there was, again, the same principle of the past and the present. So the past was the Bhakti tradition. Now, the Rasa tradition also the past, but at this particular time, the Rasa tradition had become very prominent. So, the Rasa to Bhakti, that was the intersection that was brought in the cultural way. Now, with respect to the theological, now there was Mahaprabhu's teachings from the past, and there were Advaitavadis, and there were Dvaitavadis. There were impersonalists and there were personalists. The teaching of Achintya Bheda Bhed, that was formulated in one sense, that was to reconcile both the theological teaching, especially in terms of the Sandarbhas. Now, there were some challenges which came over here also, which we'll discuss in due course. Now, in the political domain, which we again discussed briefly, was that as far as there was our tradition which was there, and there were the Muslims on one side, and there were the Rajputs on the other side. We're talking primarily about Vrindavan. So the Goswamis managed to ensure that the tradition not only survived but thrived with temples being built by maintaining peace with the Muslims and by having friendship with the Rajputs. And then we discussed the Gaudiya context itself. That there was Vrindavan and there was Bengal. So, and there were different languages used, Bengali and Sanskrit, and there were different focus, Tattva and Leela. So what was done was, so there was the message of Tattva that was coming from Raja, and there was the interest of Katha in Bengal. So what was done was, Tattva was presented through Katha. Tattva to Katha, that is the distinctive contribution of Chaitanya, Charitamrit, and Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. In this way, the legacy of Mahaprabhu was systematized by the scholars in Vraja and the followers. It was taken to the followers through the medium of the Chaitanya Charitamrit and the other works of the Goswamis. How legacy continued on will be what we'll be discussing in our next session tomorrow. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Are there any questions or comments? How was Krishnadas Goswami able to write Chaitanya Charitamrit? Well, he had heard of many of Mahaprabhu's pastimes and Nityananda's pastimes when he was a child, because at that time, Gaur Nitai, they were very much an integral part of the culture of Bengal. But then, when he came to Vrindavan, he also heard from Raghunath Das Goswami. He had the Karchas of Murai Gupta. Or rather, he had what was written based on the Karchas of Murai Gupta by Chaitanya Bhagavad, Chaitanya Mangal. So he had both three sources basically. Chaitanya Charitamrit has his own, from a historical perspective, Chaitanya Charitamrit has three sources. One is what he had heard since childhood. Then what he heard from Raghunath Goswami, especially the Puri pastimes. And then lastly was what he read in books like especially Chaitanya Bhagavad and the Chaitanya Mangal. So these books were already written. Thank you. So how will this course help in developing Prema Bhava for Krishna? Well, the course description was understanding how the opportunity for developing Prema has been passed down. The legacy of love has been passed down. So it is the appreciation of the legacy. And the more we understand how valuable the treasure is, how many challenges are faced in bringing that treasure to us, the more we will take that treasure more seriously. And that's how when we appreciate it more, then we will immerse ourselves Mm. And the more we immerse ourselves in the remembrance of the Lord, the more we will be able to relish and appreciate and immerse ourselves in bhakti. Siddhanta baliya chitte na kare alas, yaha hite Krishna lage sudruda mana. Chaitanya Charitamrita says that don't think, oh, this is sanya, this is just, oh, this is all just philosophy. What is the use of it? When we actually understand the philosophy, we understand it's so valuable. Krishna is so valuable. Maya is so insubstantial. And then when we appreciate that value, then we'll be able to immerse ourselves in Krishna more and more. So the idea is that Jiva Goswami says that when we have purity, then our preeti will keep us in remembrance of Krishna. But till that time, when we don't yet have purity. At that time, then we need buddhi. It is the buddhi that keeps us fixed in remembrance of Krishna. And by that remembrance of Krishna, we will actually be able to stay absorbed and gradually develop love for Krishna. How did Chaitanya Charitamrita? So, what was the how was Chaitanya Bhagavat contribute to Chaitanya Charitamrita? Well, that's one of the primary sources. The Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is very aware and respectful of the role of Vrindavan Das Thakur, and he says Mahaprabhu's Leelas Vyas. He says that he is Chaitanya, he is Vrindavan Das Thakur. That was its primary source material. But now Vrindavan Das Thakur doesn't write so much about what is in the Antyalila. Although that book also has Antyalila, but that doesn't describe so much the ending pastimes. Vrindavan Das Thakur was in Bengal, and Raghunath Das Goswami did not really spend much time in Bengal after he went to Puri. So basically, if you consider this is Bengal, this is Puri, and this is Vrindavan. So now Raghunath Das Goswami was here from Raghunath Goswami went from here to Puri, and then from there he went to Vrindavan. Now, after Mahaprabhu departed, it was such a devastation. Mahaprabhu's departure was a devastation. Prataparudra's departure and demise was a devastation. The attack of Muslims and the pillaging of the Puri temple was a devastation. So there's practically no legacy left over there. So Raghunath Goswami felt so terrible. He wanted to end his life. In fact, he went to Govardhan. He said, I'll go to Vrindavan, I'll be in Vrindavan, and I'll leap off Govardhan and end my life. What has happened over here? I can't live here. But then the Goswamis and others requested him, you are the sole reservoir of Krishna Katha. Of Gaura Katha, especially Mahaprabhu's later pastimes. The Bengali devotees would come for a few months, and they would stay and behold Mahaprabhu and hear something, but they were not there firsthand. So Raghunath Goswami especially is the source of much of the Antyalila. That's how, actually speaking, Chaitanya Charitamrita, you could say Chaitanya Charitamrita, it gets its Adi and Madhya. Much of it comes from Chaitanya Bhagavat, but the Antya primarily comes from Raghunath Das Goswami. Now, of course, it's not just these sources. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami also brings in the things about the philosophy and the discussions which are not necessarily there in the other biographies. That the teachings which Mahaprabhu has given to Rupa Goswami, that he has learned from Rupa Goswami. That what he has learned from what he has learned from Sanatana Goswami, that is there in that chapter. So like that, he's bringing in from various sources and integrating them in this book. Now, what was the effect of Gaudiya Vaishnavism on the world? Well, uh, well, it was to Prabhupada's credit that it was by Prabhupada's mercy that Gaudiya Vaishnavism spread all over the world. Mahaprabhu predicted the Senapati Bhakta. Nityananda Prabhu predicted Senapati Bhakta. Mahaprabhu predicted that his name would spread, the name of Krishna would be chanted all over the world. So that was done by Srila Prabhupada. So from a manifest or explicit historical perspective, the spread of Gaudiya Vaishnavism across the world happened with with Srila Prabhupada. And now that is going on. Now at that particular time, the world was changing in many different ways. Now there is in Europe at that particular time, you consider that's Europe, this is India. These are not maps, but approximately. In Europe at that time, there was gradually a renaissance that was happening. Yes, there were plagues and other things were there, but the renaissance means that there were religious authorities who were there. So there were the Catholic Church was the religious authority, and they had become mm, very autocratic to some extent. So and corrupted also. So there was the whole thing which a reformation was there against them. So there was the reformation, the Renaissance, and then there was what they call the scientific revolution. All these happened while the Gaudiya history was unfolding, and then when the British came and colonized India, then what was happening in India and what was happening in Europe intersected, and how that intersection went through. So now, at a manifest level, you could say that the same challenging at an unmanifest level or broad parallels, the same challenging of religious authorities who had become too autocratic or corrupted, that was done by the Bhakti tradition also. The Brahmanas, to some extent, not all of them certainly, but to some extent they had become very privilege conscious, and they were not only looking out at the lower caste, they were looking out even at the bhaktas. So there was a challenge to the authority. So that broad similarity is there. At the manifest level, the Gaudiya Vaishnava history's influence, Gaudiya Vaishnavism's influence on the world is still unfolding, and we are all a part of that history unfolding. So now could Mahaprabhu have appointed a successor? Yes, we could have said that he could have appointed it. But the point is that the way the Lord functions is often in very unpredictable ways. So when he functions in unpredictable ways, he sometimes lets it happen as if everything is going to be ruined. Now Krishna let Draupadi come to a situation of utter helplessness. Just when everything seemed to be ruined, it was that time he intervened. So often Krishna acts by letting situations go to the precipice. Just when it's going to fall and everything will be ruined, then Krishna intervenes and pulls things back from the precipice. So Mahaprabhu could have appointed a successor, but he did not. And of course, Nityananda Prabhu was one of his successors, the Advaita Acharya was his successor, the Goswamis were successors. And we have in terms of sampradayas or the parivars who initiated, we have the Advaita Parivar, we follow the Nityananda Prabhu, Advaita Acharya, Gadadhar Pandit, they all initiated and they all continued on like that. So yes, Mahaprabhu, that was Mahaprabhu's way of showing how his legacy would go on even among extraordinary ways. Now, of course, there's not much evidence of will being written, but when books are written, books at least clearly explain what are the teachings. See, writings can be both in terms of philosophy and in terms of practice. Okay, this is what philosophy is. This is what we stand for. These are what can use the word beliefs if we want to. And they're also about practices. This is what we do. So these are our rituals, our ceremonies, our sadhana. So we need books about both. And the Goswamis, in many ways, had to write books about both. So the will does not have to mean like a necessary legal will. Mahaprabhu didn't have any property for him to write a will. I was giving that as an example to illustrate that succession is such a delicate thing that even when the will has been written, still so many problems come up. Now, did Srila Prabhupada start the will system? Possibly. We all have to deal with the realities that we encounter in our particular situations. Now, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, when he departed, he was a magistrate. He certainly wrote a will, but Bhaktivinoda Thakur didn't really have any. He hadn't started a religious organization. So in that sense, a will was not required. And yes, Prabhupada saw what had happened after Bhaktivedanta Thakur departed, and he took new precautions. So yes, he wrote a will. Now, is Jaydev Goswami's Gita Govinda Rasa Shastra? Of course it is. See, there are two different things over here. One is the idea of rasa. The idea of rasa itself is very much prevalent. And the idea of rasa, as I said, so it was there in the rasa tradition, Natya tradition, it was there. Now, it is not that it was not there in the Bhakti tradition also. In the Bhakti tradition also it was there. Like the Bhagavatam itself uses the word rasam, rasamalayam. Yad rasamrut truptasya nanyat sadhrati kvachit. So it was there also. But what the Gaudiya tradition was, it was more like a systematic pathway to spiritual growth through rasa. So yes, we could say that what is described in books like Rasam Sindhu can help us come to the level of elevated emotions by which we can appreciate books like Gita Govinda. Now, the Parkiya Rasa is a very exalted level of spiritual experience and devotional connection. And there has to be certain refinement of emotions before that can be appreciated. Say, if we consider that somebody is doing a Bharatanatyam dance, and say a young woman is a expert dancer, and she's dancing, and there is, when she's dancing, depending on how rasik, if there's a rasik audience, or rather how rasik is the audience. If there is no rasa at all, none, then all that will be seen is, oh, this is a woman, and I can see her bodily parts. Even if they are covered, I can see it, and the observer might just feel nothing but lust. Then, if there is light, then they may observe, oh, this is an expert dance. If there is some appreciation of rasa, some understanding of how difficult dancing can be, all the dance moves are so expert, it's so captivating, it's so brilliant. But then if there is a deep understanding of rasa, then we will see that it's not just expert dance, it's actually expert depiction of, say, if it's Krishna Lila. So we will not just be seeing how expertly the hand and the legs and the body is moving, but how expertly a pastime is being depicted through it. And then if somebody has the elevated emotions by which they already have some devotion for Krishna, then this becomes like a stimulus, this becomes like a weapon by which remembrance of Krishna will be triggered. And while somebody might just be inflamed by lust by just seeing some female dancing, somebody else by the same stimuli might be just enriched with bhakti, with immense love for Krishna. So the person has to become more and more rasik. So that how to develop that rasa, how to go through the various steps of bhakti, that is not described so much in the Gita Govinda. It is more a book of the intimate pastimes in Parkiya Rasa. So we'll have one or two more questions before we conclude. As far as how this will help one develop bhakti, I don't think this course was about developing bhakti. This course was about understanding the history of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And by understanding this history, I explained how Some people might help, some people, especially those who want to appreciate the value of what they're getting and the journey through which what we are getting has gone through, and the journey that we will need to go through to carry it forward. Those who have that appreciation, they will definitely find it helpful. So